this is Diane Mourglia-Swerdlow with another podcast for expansions.com. And again, as you can see, Stewart is traveling as we speak on his way back home to Michigan. So next week he will be joining me as long as he isn't too busy. Anyway, what I want to do is kind of catch you up a little bit on some of the things that I have been talking to, because in my opinion there is a lot more news of interest surrounding a couple of very timely topics. So I want to start with Ivanka Trump, because I mentioned to you before, people are saying, oh, she's being silent on political issues, and so I said to you, well, as long as she's not saying anything, then people can call for her to speak, which would make her speak, and so on and so on and so on, because it's all a show. So as long as you understand that it's a show and you keep your eye on the show, then you can begin to understand what personal impact that it has for you. Well, anyway, so she finally broke her silence, which I told you was going to happen, and she says, quote, I would say not to conflate lack of public denouncement with silence, she said. Quote, I think there are multiple ways to have your voice heard. In some cases, it's through protest, and it's through going on the nightly news and talking about or denouncing every issue on which you disagree with. Other times it is quietly and directly and candidly. So where I disagree with my father, he knows it, unquote. Now, I'm going to ask you this question. Why should we care? Did we care what Obama's daughters think? Did we care what Clinton's daughter thought about things? So why is Ivanka in the news and all over the place? And in my opinion, we hear more from her than we do from Donald Trump's wife, Melania. Now, Melania, of course, is not elected, but generally the First Lady has a cause, and that's what we hear about. We don't hear from the daughters. We don't hear from the children. But Ivanka has more prominence out there than Melania, Donald Trump's wife. In fact, Ivanka's in the White House and Melania's not. So don't you think this is just a little odd? And then I told you that she was going to be taking, well, first of all, she was going to have an office at the White House. I told you that last week. Now they say she's actually taking an official job. She's moving from her informal role as first daughter. And did we say that about Obama's children or Clinton's child? No. She's moving from her informal role as first daughter to a formal job within the White House. Apparently, she received an office at the White House, she received access to classified information, and her new title will be Assistant to the President. Now, some of you will say, wow, that's great because she's not taking any pay. But let me tell you this, she might not be taking any pay, but how much is that job going to be costing the taxpayers' money? Because since she's working in that White House, you're going to have to pay for her office, you're going to have to pay more for her security detail, and she's going to get to travel wherever she wants at taxpayers' expense. So, her statement came out saying, quote, I have heard the concerns some have with my advising the president in my personal capacity while voluntarily complying with all ethics rules, and I will instead serve as an unpaid employee in the White House, subject to all of the same rules as other federal employees. I would say, Stewart would say, we go, yeah, right. We are pleased, says the statement, that Ivanka Trump has chosen to take this step in her, get this, unprecedented role as first daughter. Okay, unprecedented role as first daughter and in support of the president. So I will tell you this, or ask you, I should say, is this the beginning of a family dynasty? We kind of saw this with the Bushes and they kind of played at it, but now in my opinion they are setting this up to happen. And if you will remember in a podcast I did probably a couple months or so ago, that it says that the younger generation are not so happy with democracy. And actually, they're more happy about an autocracy if that they are not happy with the democracy, and they don't care if they have to give up anything as long as they can be safe. So they're not happy with democracy, supposedly. And as you know, the news reports what it wants you to hear. Now, going further, she said the statement says, Ivanka's services as an unpaid employee furthers our commitments to ethics, transparency, and compliance, and affords her increased opportunities to lead initiatives driving real policy benefits for the American public that would not have been available to her previously. And again, at what cost to the taxpayer? And did you know that in China, Ivanka Trump is known as a goddess? specifically the goddess Ivanka. Apparently, her lavish lifestyle and business acumen resonates with young professionals who are hungry for fame and fortune. And young Chinese women look up to Ivanka as a leader and a symbol of power and ambition. And did you know that dozens of Chinese firms have applied to use Ivanka as their trademark? Everything from wallpaper to alcohol. And so I happened to put in her name, Ivanka Trump, along with the South China Morning Post, and there are over 3 million hits for Ivanka Trump. So we want to watch this tie that's happening between the Trump, I'm going to say dynasty, and China. And keeping this in mind, here this last week, Ivanka shared a photo of her 1-year-old son Theodore playing with building blocks with Chinese letters on them, showing that he's already familiar with the language. Her 5-year-old daughter Arabella has been a superstar in China since a viral video of her speaking Mandarin gained over 100 million views. In February, 5-year-old Arabella sang a song celebrating the Chinese New Year, and Ivanka and Arabella were both invited to the Chinese embassy in Washington recently, where they watched musicians perform. And then you also might have seen the video of Arabella singing to the Chinese President Xi Jinping in Mandarin and his wife. And we have a video that's been shown publicly where the President and First Lady Melania Trump are speaking to the Chinese couple. Then Ivanka appears with her husband, who is of course Trump's senior advisor, Jared Kushner, and 2 of their children, Arabella, who's 5, and this time 3-year-old Joseph. Ivanka can be heard telling the President and his wife that they wanted to make them feel at home while staying at Mar-a-Lago. And then next thing we know, Arabella is performing a Mandarin song for the visiting dignitaries, apparently a traditional Chinese folk song. Then her 3-year-old brother Joseph joins her to recite a bit of Chinese poetry. So, according to U.S. Magazine, Arabella has been studying Mandarin since she was about 16 months old, and in 2012, Ivanka told the South China Morning Post that, quote, "My daughter does not speak much yet, but she seems to know as many words in Mandarin as she does in English." Now, why are they teaching their children Mandarin Chinese? And why are they cultivating this relationship with the Chinese? In my opinion, these children are being groomed just like you see in the United Kingdom of all the royal children. Will and Kate's children are being groomed. They're being shown in public. Ivanka's children are being shown in the White House. They're growing up there. So something's going on. And in my opinion, if you don't know how to speak Mandarin Chinese, maybe you better learn, because it could be that might be one of our official languages, just like what happened with Spanish. So you might see signs in English and Spanish and Mandarin Chinese next. We don't know. And speaking of grooming young children, something came into my mind this week, and I went back and did a little bit of research, and it has to do with what I told you about 2 weeks ago when I talked about what was going on with Dr. Phil and why the global elite allowed him, or I won't even say allowed him, I will say groomed him to put that show on the news for everybody to read about. Because remember what I tell you, that first of all you think something is abnormal and then it becomes normal. So I had people respond to that podcast saying it will never be normal. Well, I want you to listen to what I have to tell you, because in my opinion, when we look at the Trump dynasty and what's going on with Ivanka, I want you to think about Donald Trump, because I put in the Google search Donald Trump sex Ivanka, and I got 25 million hits. So, because every time we turn around, we talk about all these things that or we read about, or we see pictures of Donald Trump talking about Ivanka in a sexual way. Now, if Ivanka is a businesswoman, and she does respect herself, and all this is happening around women's rights these days, and women's rights to be who they are, then I will tell you, if my father spoke to me, or spoke about me in the way Donald Trump speaks about Ivanka, I would be very upset. In fact, during my research, Donald Trump once even allegedly asked if it was wrong to be sexually attracted to Ivanka. Apparently, the line was reportedly deleted from a Washington Post column before publication. The Washington Post column supposedly compared Donald Trump to Michael Corleone of the Godfather saga, and which was initially included in a controversial quote that was later removed before its publication. Specifically, the quote dealt with Trump's relationship with his daughter Ivanka, who was at the time 13 years old, and he asked, quote, "Is it wrong to be more sexually attracted to your own daughter than your wife?" Unquote. According to BuzzFeed, the line was included in a version of Cohen's column called, quote, "Our Next President, The Godfather," that was distributed to other publications prior to its publication for that syndication purposes. And then you want to remember back in 2003, this has been all over the news on the Howard Stern show, when Trump said, quote, "She's got the best body." The next year he was back on Stern agreeing with the radio host that she was, quote, "a piece of ass," unquote. This is what you would want your father saying about you if you're a respectable businesswoman? I don't think so. He also admitted on The View that, quote, "I've said, if Ivanka were not my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her," unquote. Then Ivanka flashed a look of horror at her father after he jokes that the only thing they have in common is sex during a 2013 interview. Again, something I would not want my father talking about me about. Then, as I was scanning some of these articles, some of the newer ones actually, but I've seen these the whole time that Donald Trump was running for president, and of course before. This particular person said, "When I see pictures of Donald and Ivanka Trump when she was a teenager, they're sitting on a statue of parents having sex. She's on his lap with a hand intimately caressing his face. That's wrong." And then the latest in the creepiness of the Trump father-daughter experiences comes from Twitter, which is a picture of a picture. And this article says it's a bit grainy. There's no original source listed as of yet. But it's obviously a professionally posed picture of Ivanka, who keeps getting younger in these things, in bed with her father. And so this person says why it is biologically wrong for Trump to have the hots for Ivanka. So article after article, photo after photo, we see what he said and how she reacted, which generally is non-reactive. And so, in my opinion, this is still grooming people for incest, which I have talked about that along as pedophilia. There are groups who claim that that's okay. There are groups that and I've reported to you about this before, father and daughters who run off together, who have children together. So all kinds of things that are going on out there sexually, and it is going to be advanced. Now again, you may be thinking, oh no, not in my lifetime. Well, I will have a couple more things, which I have told you about before, but a couple of new things I'm going to add in, plus a couple of things that have kind of come to my attention recently. There was a police chief in the UK who said, quote, "Pedophiles who view indecent images but go no further should not be jailed but rehabilitated." Apparently, he said, the police forces cannot cope with the huge rise in reports. And in late 2016, figures suggest the number of individuals looking at such images could exceed 500,000. Then this police chief goes on to say that those who view such images should be placed on the sex offenders register. However, he said referrals to rehabilitation increasingly are effective, and not using the court system would speed things up. And then we have the American Psychiatric Association that says it is natural and normal to be aroused by children. I'm sorry, not true. An academic conference said that to be interested in pedophilia is natural and normal for males, and at least a sizable minority of normal males would like to have sex with children, and normal males are aroused by children, unquote. The American Psychiatric Association could not decide if hebephilia should be included as a disorder. Hebephilia is the sexual preference for children in early puberty, usually anywhere between 11 to 14 years old. The proposal became a hot topic due to the fact that children are going through puberty at a younger age. The current definition of pedophilia is to have an attraction to prepubescent children, but these children are not prepubescent if they have actually gone through puberty. And I also reported, when I reported that story originally in the fall, that one of the enthusiastic participants was a man named Tom O'Carroll, who is a multiple child sex offender, a longtime campaigner for the legalization of sex with children, and former head of the Pedophile Information Exchange. He wrote on his blog after this conference, "Wonderful, it was a rare few days when I could feel relatively popular." Okay? And then one more article I want to tell you about. Dr. James Cantor of CAMH has shown pedophilia is like a sexual orientation, a deep attraction that cannot change. Now, pedophiles who have never molested children are seeking social acceptance. And in fact, they have a website called Virtuous Pedophiles, who are for people who are attracted to children but claim they have never molested children. They say they were born this way, they cannot change, but they could control it. We choose to be attracted to children, and we cannot make that attraction go away. This is what the website says. We can resist the temptation to abuse children sexually, and many of us present no danger to children whatsoever. Yet we are despised for having a sexual attraction that we did not choose, cannot change, and successfully resist. Now, this sounds to me like all kinds of sexual orientations that are going on out there. And between consenting adults is one thing, but when we're talking about children, to me, is a whole different story. So when we talk about is pedophilia ever going to be legal, I am telling you right now that you are being imprinted by that. And when I take a look at the relationship between Ivanka and Trump, that is not what a normal relationship should be between a father and a daughter. And the fact that they are putting her up front more so than his wife, Melania, and he even says, or at least reportedly said, is it wrong to be more sexually attracted to his daughter than his wife? All these things are going to continue to grow. So I'm just giving you warning. So before you write in, it's never going to happen. It is happening, just like everything else Stewart and I have been telling you about. It is happening right in front of you. But it is very subtle and it is very insidious. So you must watch your mind pattern. You must do your work. And you really need your hyperspace oversoul protection techniques so that you can be focused and you can be balanced and you can be connected to your own source and not be influenced and not participate in things like this. So, moving along, speaking of things we have told you about, we keep telling you that, aliens have been here, aliens are still here, and there are humans that live on other planets. So, they can't just tell you that all at once, so they have to keep breaking it to you. So now, an Earth-like planet with an atmosphere has been discovered for the very first time. Ta-da! Apparently, this is the first time evidence of an atmosphere around an exoplanet that's near Earth size has been discovered, even though, of course, it is 39 light years away. It originally was a potential Venus twin because it's a rocky world with a very high surface temperature, but now they found that the planet Venus might have a thick atmosphere in common too. So this is the first evidence that researchers can use to say that the planet's atmospheres may be used to try and determine if these worlds are suitable for life as we know it on Earth, or even to identify potential traces of life. So, there you have it. And before you know it, it won't be 39 light years away, or we will have found a way to travel 39 light years away, so very quickly. So, just be prepared. Now, this story I found interesting. This is about fasting, to kind of switch gears a little bit. But those of you who are members of my site know that I do a group blog fast once a week for 12, 24, and 36 hours. And I also do one once a month, 24, 48, and 72 hours. And I have my fasting and detox pay-per-view packages on the website, which are very popular. And I want you to keep in mind, I'm not a dietitian and I'm not a nutritionist. And I have done this for many, many years. Now, what's interesting is I have watched what people have said about fasting for a long time. I use fasting as a mental exercise to take control of my life and to teach you to do the same thing. There are health benefits as an aside. However, because conventional medicine, as a general rule, does not include the mental benefit of it, I want you to hear what this new fasting study says. This particular study says that fasting for 3 days can regenerate the entire immune system. Apparently, even in the elderly, scientists have found in a breakthrough described as remarkable that fasting diets have been criticized by nutritionists for being unhealthy, but new research suggests starving the body kickstarts stem cells into producing new white blood cells which fight off infection. In fact, scientists at the University of Southern California say the discovery could be particularly beneficial for people suffering from damaged immune systems such as cancer patients on chemotherapy. The researchers say that fasting flips a regenerative switch. It gives the okay for stem cells to go ahead and begin proliferating and rebuild the entire system. And the good news is that the body gets rid of the parts of the system that might be damaged or old, inefficient during the fast. I could have told you all this without all the research studies. If you start this with a system heavily damaged by chemotherapy or aging, fasting cycles can generate literally a new immune system. Apparently, scientists found that prolonged fasting also reduces the enzyme called pKa, which is linked to aging, and a hormone which increases cancer risk and tumor growth. We could not predict that prolonged fasting would have such a remarkable effect in promoting stem cell-based regeneration of the system. Fasting for 72 hours also protected cancer patients against the toxic impact of chemotherapy, and they are investigating the possibility that these effects are applicable to many different systems and organs, not just the immune system. So if you want to learn more about fasting, I suggest you join my blog. You read or watch, I guess, that's a webinar pay-per-view, my fasting and detox webinars. I suggest those. And again, I am not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, and before you start any new program, I always suggest that you do check with your healthcare provider. Okay, moving right along. A second grader in Phoenix, Arizona was stamped with a phrase called lunch money to alert his parents that he needed more funds in his account. And his mother said this was humiliating. Now, it was a stamp. They're calling it a tattooing of the student. And the staff member at the cafeteria said she didn't want the students to be embarrassed, so she asked them if they wanted a stamp or a reminder slip. And I will tell you, as a mother who has had a second grader, they don't really know the difference until it's done. So I don't think it's a good idea to stamp people. And if there is an issue, you can send a note home. It's very easy. So don't do these kind of things to your kids. And here, this I thought was bizarre, but no more bizarre than anything else that I've been talking to you about. There is a new craze sweeping Scandinavia called hobby horse riding. Now, hobby horses, for those of you who might not know what that is, it is the head of a horse. It's usually stuffed, not a real horse, but like a fabric horse. And it's on a stick, like a broomstick, and you ride that around. That's what little kids did when I was little, before a lot of other things that they can do. So apparently they're now a craze, and there are apparently 10,000 people participating in this and expected to show up at the annual Hobby Horse Championships in Helsinki on April 23rd. So my feeling is, if you're in Finland, get a life, because I don't think that this is something that is really important enough for you to be doing all this, although I guess it gets you out and about. The sport, they call it a sport. I wouldn't call it a sport, but next thing you know, maybe it's going to be in the Olympics. I don't know. It includes dressage and show jumping. And anyway, they name their horses, they cover them at night, they put them to sleep, and it's, to me, very bizarre. So let's see where this one goes, okay? And then my last subject, which is a little on the lengthy side, but I'm going to make it a little fast for you, is about healing crystals. Now, crystals have been around for a long time, and one thing that Stewart and I talked to you about is that crystals really take your energy. However, we do use crystals in our radionics boxes to take energy and to distribute it, because we connect it using specific items, including copper, and we connect it in a specific way. So if you're interested in radionics, check that out on our website. Now, here we have a company who has created something called Chakrubs, which is the original crystal sex toy company. Apparently, they make handmade dildos from precious minerals like rose quartz and pure amethyst. And one reviewer wrote, "It makes me feel more alive," and another one said, "My shock rub is calming for my anxiety, and though I've got a long way to go, it has notably increased my ability to see my self-worth again." Really? Please. That's just what people will do is amazing to me. However, Gwyneth Paltrow, a programming icon, apparently at one point was selling vaginal jade eggs. But gynecologists said that those eggs actually had potential health risks, such as bacterial vaginosis and toxic shock syndrome. So, I mean, really? And then it goes on to talk about Gwyneth Paltrow. It says she's a vagina aristocrat. Apparently, she recommends a 15,000 24-karat gold-plated vibrator. So if you can't afford that, you're supposed to get one of her jade eggs, I guess. And of course, I think I pretty well told you what the gynecologist said, that the eggs are porous, could allow bacteria to get inside, the egg could act like a fomite, and apparently it could be deadly. And then this gynecologist goes on to say that the pelvic floor muscles are not meant to continuously contract, and doing so could cause pain. So don't use these eggs, according to the doctors. And they're $66 a piece, I guess, sold out. And then Gwyneth Paltrow also suggested a mugwort, I think it's a misspelling on the article, a mugwort steam cleanse, where you sit on a mini throne and then all kinds of steam and I guess mugwort goes up and it's supposed to balance your female hormone levels. However, experts say again, this is a red flag. They said that steam, herbal or otherwise, is not the best thing to be shooting up your genitals, because the vagina, uterus, and vulva are basically nature's own form of a self-cleaning oven. Let them do their own thing so you don't wind up with other issues. So just because these are crazes that are going on the internet, don't think, wow, I should do that. That's why I'm telling you, do your own work. Do your hyperspace oversoul work. Join our website, like our page, read our books. We have lots of information so you don't get caught up in things that are not healthy, and they are actually potentially harmful mentally, emotionally, physically, much less spiritually, and everything else in your life. So with that said, I want to remind you that Stewart will be in Poland and Germany the end of April. Be sure and check our website out. Yes, the lectures are in English. They will be translated. I don't know if he has any personal consultations left in Germany. I know Poland is sold out. But because he's been gone, I haven't had a chance to ask what's going on there. And then, of course, in June is my trip to Italy. This closes, registration closes the end of April. You only have a couple weeks left. If you want to go, let us know. And then in September, we have our September Spectacular, followed by our bus trip, the Big Bend and Carlsbad Caverns National Parks. This is going to be amazing. We're going to go to Roswell. We're going to go to UFO museums. We're going to see lots of things that go on in New Mexico and Texas. So I'm really excited about this one. It departs October 6th. We do have payment plans. We have Days with Stewart still available for this summer. So if you're interested in a day with Stewart, if you're interested in a personal retreat, which we do for people, you want a class, 2 or 3 days on a specific subject for you and your friends, let us know. We need to get that on the calendar because the calendars fill very, very fast. With that said, there's so much going on here at expansions.com. There's always something for you, and don't ever tell me you can't afford it, because our membership is less than $1 a day, and Stewart and I are on there all the time, posting our articles, talking on our blogs, and communicating with you one-on-one. So there are lots of opportunities there for you to see us somewhere in the world or to participate with us one-on-one. So thank you again, Janet Diane Mourglia-Swerdlow, expansions.com.